So, a little more now on a really fascinating story. These two American astronauts went into space for what was meant to be 8 days, might actually not be able to return home until early next year.
It's a big delay, isn't it? That's like a proper flight delay.
Yeah.
Barry Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams set off for the International Space Station on June the 5th. But the Boeing Starliner aircraft they were travelling in encountered problems on its approach. Poppy Jeffrey picks up the story.
They were meant to be back on Earth for the Olympics, but had to get into the Spirit on the International Space Station instead, without knowing when they'll be back.
We've had an absolute blast pretending to be Olympic athletes.
3, 2, 1.
They launched in June on a test to see how the spacecraft performs. It was meant to last 8 days, but issues with the thrusters on their Boeing Starliner means they are now stuck. The question is, can they return safely on that same spacecraft? Or do they need to come back on a rocket owned by rival company SpaceX, planned for February? That is not without risk, though. Their spacesuits are not fit for SpaceX flight, and they may have to return unsuited.
Go forward into Starliner, where...
A decision is expected at the end of the month, and in the meantime, NASA says both astronauts are doing great, and as veterans of space are well prepared for unexpected scenarios.
Well, it has to be pointed out, it's not something that happens to everyone to just spend 8 months in space. It's still an incredible opportunity. And these two astronauts, they are incredible veterans. They've been in space several times. They know what they're doing. So I suppose when this is your job and your job is so spectacular, like being an astronaut, you probably enjoy to stay a bit longer.
Overnight, a Roscosmos cargo spacecraft launched to deliver nearly 3 tons of food, fuel and supplies to the International Space Station as the two astronauts prepare for an extended stay in space. Poppy Jeffrey, BBC News.
Astrophysicist Chris Copperwheat joins us now. Morning.
Good morning.
There are quite a few things we learned from that report.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't know the thing about the spacesuits until yesterday, the incompatibility of the spacesuits they're wearing with the capsule they'll potentially have to come down in. So, one of the safety precautions, normally whenever they're going up or going down, they wear the spacesuits. If they come down in February in the SpaceX capsule, they'll have to come down without, which just shows that whichever option they choose, there is an element of risk involved.
Yeah, I mean... We've used the word stuck, and whenever it's written down, it's done in inverted commas. They're stuck up there, and many scientists are saying, look, they're going to be very happy because they're scientists ultimately. It's their dream. They're going to be fine, but there gets to a point. Doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about stuck, this is not like Apollo 13 stuck. If you think of the space station, NASA have likened it in terms of the amount of space they have to live and work to a 6-bedroomed house. So it's that type of size. There are 7 other astronauts there. They're well supplied in terms of food and oxygen and water. So it's a livable working environment, but obviously a little longer than they planned for. Although whenever they do plan a mission like this is all part of the contingency, of course. So they will have prepared and trained for this possibility, although they probably didn't really expect it was going to happen.
Yeah, I suppose for the individuals themselves, so this is Barry Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, they would have mentally prepared for a certain length of time. That's an adjustment, isn't it? Obviously, they're well trained.
Yeah.
But that's a big adjustment. And for their families at home, presumably.
Absolutely.
That's the other part of the equation.
Yes. So yes, it's potentially, if they take the SpaceX option, they'll be there until February. So they'll be missing Christmas. We're talking 8 months in space rather than 9 days. Now, neither of them are strangers to long-duration trips in space before. They've both been on the space station before. They're both familiar with it. Before they were astronauts, they were military pilots. So they have the right stuff. They're familiar with these sorts of issues and the risks involved. But yes, it must be a huge strain on them, I guess.
It's clearly not the biggest question in relation to what's going on there, but do you know why he's called Butch?
I have no idea, no.
Well, we don't know then.
No, I don't.
That's pretty simple.
I think it is his name rather than a nickname.
Oh, is it? I saw inverted comments there, so I assumed
maybe
it was
it's
a
not.
nickname.
Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Oh, we don't know that. And do you also know, we were just musing on this picture we can see behind us there. What's he got on his chin? Is that some kind of we were wondering if it's something to do with the helmet, whether some kind of a protection for his chin on the helmet?
Yeah, I think so, yes, absolutely, yeah, just... protection. I mean, maybe it holds some of the cables in place. I mean, underneath the suit, there are many sort of layers. There are sort of bio-monitoring equipment to measure their conditions, the heart rate, and so on. All of these parameters. This is why these suits are so complicated. I mean, when they go back down or when they go up, they're plugged in the shuttle. It's in the craft itself to life support and to communications and so on. So this is why you get these incompatibilities. I mean, it's one of the things that probably now will be thought about a lot more. So the genesis of this is NASA had this competition, essentially. They wanted multiple contractors providing multiple spacecraft, multiple routes to the space station. The SpaceX delivery was very successful. It was on time, it was on budget, and it's made many trips since then. The Boeing version, not so successful. It's been plagued with all these problems so far. It's overrun in terms of budget. But it looks like, these questions of, sort of compatibility between these different routes are something that I think will inform people's thinking going on.
We say they're stuck. There is a lifeboat.
Yes. So
on the International Space Station.
Yes.
If something goes tragically wrong on the station, they can get off.
There is a permanently moored lifeboat, yes, the space station. So that at the moment, that has seats for the crew that were supposed to be on there. So the lifeboat for these two is in fact the ship they came up in. So the Starliner, there are these safety concerns. That would be their lifeboat in the event of a sort of a catastrophic situation. In that sort of situation, the risk calculation is that it will be acceptable for them to go down in that spacecraft. I mean, most people think that the fault here is relatively minor and the spacecraft will be able to return to Earth safely. It's just when you're not in that emergency situation, there's no need to take that unnecessary risk. And I think NASA's culture to risk has changed quite dramatically since the Columbia disaster, where I think a lot of the communications from below, from the engineers on the ground, their concerns wasn't being propagated up to management. They have a much more open policy, by all accounts, in NASA now, in terms of opinions, in taking opinions seriously sort of throughout the organisation.
Christopher, we've spoken to you many times. I don't think I've ever seen your title in full. Telescope astronomer in charge.
Yes.
I rather like that.
Absolutely.
That's the official title.
Yeah. So
I
direct a telescope in the Canary Islands called the Liverpool Telescope, which is owned by my university, Liverpool John Moores University. It's a major international research facility that is UK funded, a hugely productive facility for doing all types of science. So my day job when I'm not here is I run that telescope on behalf of a community of scientists across the UK and across the world. And for schools and educational users, we provide telescope data to thousands of schools across the UK and Ireland.
Excellent. So that's Dr. Christopher Copperwheat, who's in charge, basically.
There you go.
I'm in charge of astronomy.
Thank you.